I've never seen a company fail because they were too focused.
We had AHA and TCT's conferences this month, and we wanted to provide some market data on this.
When you make $1 gazillion in revenue, you can do things like open up a publishing house. I met with CEO Quentin Blackford, and we talked a lot about what they're doing, and essentially the data sets they have. Their profit margin is over 68, 70%.
Wow.
It's a really impressive company. Q3 results provide one of the clearest signals yet that Medtech is exiting 2025 with a lot of focus, a lot of confidence, a strong setup for 2026.
You can't replace part of the brain.
Like, you treat them the same.
Source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the puppets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the $90 billion company. They had help up high, a lot of things.
You stayed in medtech with your host, Omar and Khatib.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to our ongoing series in partnership with LSI called This Month in MedTech. We're going to review November. A lot of exciting things going on, joined by our market intel czar, Nick Talamantes. Nick, good to see you. How's it going?
I'm doing well, Omar. It's good to see you as well. You ready for Thanksgiving?
I am. You know, I'll tell you, every year, doesn't matter whether I was employed or I'm in school or, you know, I'm running my own business, no matter what I tell myself, starting on Monday, the week of Thanksgiving, this is like the Twilight Zone. Like I try and get work done and things get done, but then it's just like, it's a slog. I feel like this week and then the week between Christmas and New Year's is always a Twilight Zone. But today is only Tuesday. Yesterday I had a good day. I had a good day yesterday, but today I get a lot of stuff done.
Excellent.
Got a lot of really good books. For those who are interested, looking for a really good book, Stripe Press, the publication arm of Stripe, because, you know, when you make $1 gazillion in revenue, you can do things like open up a publishing house. They have probably the best book website I've ever seen in my life. But I'm reading this book called Boom, Bubbles and the End of Stagnation. Really good book just on bubbles in the marketplace, obviously. And actually, it's kind of inspiring me to write a piece myself. I think we need a bubble in medtech. But that, I'll tease that out there, so I'll be writing about that soon.
Awesome. So, on that note of booms and bubbles, AI boom or bubble, where do you land on this? Is it happening next year?
Oh, it's definitely a bubble, but there's a positive to these bubbles, you know. So there's a lot of capital that's going to flow in. It'll help things go to the next level, but no, it's definitely a bubble. I mean, there's an insane amount of capital going into it. But I mean, if you think about even in the internet and the .com boom, you know, there are some bubbles like, you know, there's a kind of a bubble with like fiber optic cables, right? There's a lot of companies that did that, but those fiber optic cables essentially laid the groundwork for like things like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube to kind of take off, right? And so we'll see. But there is the AI hype machine is real. You know, it is definitely real. And I don't know, there's something, you know, Michael Berry isn't like the end all be all, but like him taking a short position against Palantir. And then who was it? Peter Thiel sold, I think, all his Nvidia stock. SoftBank sold their position in Nvidia. And then you had Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, also offloading some shares. So it's interesting. So we'll see.
Very interesting. Well, we're not a tech podcast. That might be a spinoff one day about
No,
it.
totally.
For today, let's talk about MedTech in November.
Absolutely. So November closed with essentially one of the busiest weeks in MedTech M&A all year round. And thanks to our trusted market intel team at LSI are tipping us off on that. So there's a surge of cardiovascular updates around AHA and TCT conferences, Q3 earnings that showed a really strong momentum heading into 2026. Innovation and consolidation were obviously a big defining themes of the month, with capital strategy and clinical progress essentially converging across the sector. So let's get into it. So first thing, story number one, we got November M&A surge. So November essentially delivered one of the strongest bursts in medtech M&A we've seen all year round. This was capped by Abbott's $21 billion acquisition of Exact Sciences. So it's a top 10 MedTech deal of all time. I think the number one was Medtronic buying Nvidia,
Yes.
right? At like
Yeah.
58 billion. Yeah, that was a big one. And with 2025 M&A activity now surpassing last year's total and tuck-ins dominating the landscape, strategics are essentially doubling down on precision acquisitions that strengthen core growth areas. We've seen this all year round with strategics like J&J divesting certain divisions so they can just get more focused. And essentially this wave of deal making underscores how medtech companies are navigating higher financing costs and then tighter regulatory timelines by buying proven capabilities rather than just scale. Nick, your take on the current sort of situation in the market?
Yeah, I would say Abbott's acquisition of Exact Sciences definitely deviates from this theme or trend we've been hearing about a lot this year about tuck-in acquisitions. As you mentioned, this is a top 10 deal. I think it's number 4 or 5 on that top 10 list now once it all goes through. So it's certainly impressive. But the rest of the deals this month, or this past week, I should say, they really all do fit into that that trend of tuck-in acquisitions. When you look at GE acquiring Intelerad, Solventum acquiring Acerra Surgical, and then Spectrum Life acquiring Dr. J, who is an LSI alumni. Acquiring commercial-ready or commercialized companies that are fitting really nicely into existing portfolios, usually high-growth segments. It's great to see. Great way to kind of close out the year here.
So let's dive into like I guess the three or four acquisitions that happened. So first is like Abbott acquiring Exact Sciences. So Exact essentially has a projected annual revenue of $3 billion through its Cologuard test. So for those who are familiar, many people don't know about Exact Sciences. A lot of people are familiar with Cologuard, which is a test for colorectal cancer screening. The diagnostics revenue was about down 5% year to date. So essentially reinforces Abbott's diagnostic growth engine. I think what's interesting is that this was a pretty bold acquisition in the sense that by bringing in precision oncology, a precision oncology powerhouse like Exact Sciences into its diagnostic portfolio, Abbott's essentially trying to rewrite what you can think of like core adjacencies mean in this space. And Exact Sciences diagnostic revenue kind of softening. The acquisition definitely signals sort of a long game bet on cancer diagnostics as a high value growth lever. I think if I can tease out future episodes that I have a few big publicly traded companies coming on the show, but I think that everybody's trying to move into the space of not just diagnostics, but like annual screenings, right?
Yeah.
Things that are going to be like necessary for everyone. And I think that with the advent of a lot of genetic testing, there are things that are going to pop up where if you have a history of, let's say, prostate cancer in your family, maybe you don't wait to get screened when you're 40. Maybe there's something they can help with screening earlier on. That's just like one example, but I feel like there's a lot of other things there.
Yeah, the acquisition, it's interesting. Abbott's not been in the oncology space at all. Oncology has obviously been a huge market, especially if we just look at the broader fundraising trends and kind of even market trends across the med device industry. Oncology is ascendant. I mean, it's always been big. Cancer is huge, obviously, but if you look at sort of the core markets in the med tech industry, oncology is definitely up there, which maybe some people might find surprising since it's not a super device heavy space in a very simplistic way. Exact Sciences has been building out their portfolio exactly into what you were just saying, Omar, about early detection, annualized screenings. They've since moved and expanded beyond Cologuard, and I think that this is a good move because if you look at where colorectal cancer screening is going, the Cologuard test is definitely going to be facing some challenges from blood-based or liquid biopsy type tests, which are a little easier to utilize and deploy, especially if you're looking at annual screenings for high-risk patients.
No, absolutely. And then, on that note, let's, kind of moving on to Solventum acquiring Acerra Surgical. Nick, tell us a little bit more about that. Before we do, this is something I wanted to signal. There was a article that I wrote a few weeks ago that was getting passed around the industry called The Birth of Mini Strategics. And so my thesis essentially, was was that, when all these divestitures happened in the industry, like DePuy spinning off from J&J, Solventum spinning off from 3M, the list kind of goes on. These are all mini strategics that I kind of try and define it between from like 2 to 15 billion. I mean, that's not like a hard range to go by. But I think what's interesting about that is that it's going to make the M&A environment much, much healthier in the industry because, for DePuy or Solventum or any of these companies to compete with these other strategics, the only way that's going to happen is through M&A. And so it's going to, I think, shorten timelines for companies, which will bring in a lot more capital and then more importantly, make it a lot more competitive. So instead of like having a tiny handful of strategics that have the opportunity to just kind of wait around and see, they're competing with these mini strategics that are really aggressively trying to catch up, so I think that's a good thing. So tell us about Acerra Surgical. Who's Acerra? What do they do? And this acquisition was for 850 to 900 mil.
Yeah. It's a pretty big acquisition. It definitely higher than the average acquisition price that we've seen this year if we extract the Exact Sciences acquisition price from the math that we're doing here. So it's a good deal. Acerra is a $90 million roughly company in terms of annual revenue. So commercial, very commercial, in fact. They have an advanced wound care solution, and that is fitting very nicely within Solventum's largest business, which is on wound care. If you look more specifically at like Compass data and the global wound care market, advanced wound care solutions like Acerra Surgicals, it's the fastest growing segment. So it's a very nice synergistic play, very much a classic or tried and true tuck-in acquisition for Solventum. And I'll just agree with you. It's great to see these mini strategics or however you want to categorize them. I do like that you coined that term, and I have to try to implement it more myself in our industry analyses. It is great for the overall health of the M&A space.
Totally. And then just kind of round out the M&As that happen. We had GE Healthcare acquiring Intelerad. So this was kind of the second major imaging deal this year, and essentially adds cloud-native, AI-enabled enterprise imaging. And again, it's one of those examples where you have your traditional strategics like a GE. They're not going to develop in-house high-tech capabilities that involve AI and everything, maybe to a certain extent. But I think that the M&A route is going to make a lot of sense. I think Siemens is a great example of a company that's very active in their venture arm in terms of investing in companies and looking for partnerships. But tell us a little bit more about the GE acquisition of Intelerad.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. It's another AI pickup for GE Healthcare, but what stood out to us from this is they like where Intelerad commercial footprint already is. So a couple things about the deal. I don't know if we touched on it. Intelerad is projected to do about $300 million in annual revenue next year. So very healthy commercial company, but with a strong footprint in outpatient and ambulatory surgery centers, which is where we're seeing a lot of care shifting. So really, it's just a very logical, pragmatic move on GE's part, where they're going to adopt cutting edge technologies that, as you said, aren't being necessarily developed in-house, but also acquiring technologies that are going to expand their own reach.
Yeah. And I think, again, it'll be interesting to see GE spun out from GE. GE Healthcare spun out from GE, so GE Healthcare is its own stock. If we check it out today under the ticker, it is, let's take a quick look here. So year to date, they're up 3%. So, I mean, definitely a lot. So essentially they're, and again, so GE Healthcare is a pretty decent sized company. They're a $36 billion market cap company. But again, if you think about it in the greater scheme of things, like GE Healthcare is technically not a mini strategic. They're not like a major strategic like a Stryker. And so they're going to be playing this sort of M&A game to start competing, right? And so I wonder if now the new thing, in the past, it was just consolidation at all costs and, just acquire everything you can. But I feel like now it's really just acquiring things that go tuck in core to like our core offering for every single company. It just makes a lot of sense, right? And focus.
Yeah, if you look at like any of the major strategic acquisitions this year, or I shouldn't say any, but the majority of them, I won't make such a blanket statement. They usually align with the high growth business segments within the company. So certainly we've moved away from just having any company that sort of touches a portfolio or might seem interesting to add to a portfolio into strengthening core business offerings.
Yeah, and I'll be kind of interested to see like what some of the larger strategics like an Intuitive, like a Stryker, Medtronic as well, what they start acquiring and looking at. And if the, sort of entrance of these mini strategics into the marketplace and making M&A a lot more competitive, if it sort of changes things for them. Of course, like Boston Scientific is another one. Boston Scientific is probably the most active strategic.
They are,
Charlie Atlan is by far the most active strategic buyer out there,
Yeah, by I think they have 3 or 4 acquisitions this year based off of our count. Yeah, so certainly the most acquisitions this year.
How many of those belong to Uncle Ray?
I have to double check. I know at least one of them does. Nalu, right?
Nalu. And then I feel like there's another one.
Sonics was 2 years ago, and then there's I am blanking on the Sonovi, I think so. Yeah. So certainly, and I think Ray is going to be at our event next year, or in March.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get to hear some more really interesting stories about what he's working on, what he's doing, who he's talking to, because he's got a great track record right now.
Absolutely. And we just let's just sort of round things out. Spectrum.life acquired Dr. J. It's essentially expansion to digital mental health. Dr. J essentially developed an AI therapy companion. This one's kind of interesting. I don't know what to make of it because the digital health, and especially the mental health, is can be very much like a hit and miss.
Yeah.
But I think that it's still early days for a lot of these digital health platforms. And I felt like digital health was kind of barely staying afloat heading into 2020. COVID happened. It really accelerated things on the digital health front. And now out of COVID, a lot of people just expect to have care and therapy and a lot of different things done from home. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how this sort of grows, and maybe if traditional strategics start adopting those kind of things.
Yeah, we have to, of course, give a shout out to LSI alumni. It's great to see companies that have come through our ecosystem getting acquired, doing any types of deals, really. Dr. J, they have a software as medical device platform. As you said, it's an AI therapy companion. It's what's interesting to me about it is I've been seeing a lot of discussion outside of our industry about people using AI solutions like a ChatGPT to have conversations and to kind of work through, let's call it, mental health issues. So you have people already kind of familiar with this concept, and now you're taking a device like what a solution like what Dr. J has developed, really forging it and making it focused on doing the task of being a mental health therapy companion versus a general purpose AI like ChatGPT. It'll be interesting to see. People are familiar with it, I guess, is to my point. People are familiar with this concept of talking to AI chatbots. Now you're using it to regulate your wellness. I think the company that acquired them is focusing on getting it into workplaces, into universities, and into the hands of providers. So we'll have to keep an eye on how that goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to follow. And then something that I need to kind of try and go to, because I've been to Vive in the past, but I've heard a lot of great things about health or HLTH. So I definitely gotta go check that out and see what's going on there.
Is that where the seed is for all these more software as medical device solutions?
Yeah, they had Ludacris a couple years ago. I think they had Big Sean this year.
Okay.
It's not your traditional
party, health tech party.
Yeah, it's pretty. Can LSI get Ludacris? Can you talk to Scott about that?
You're talking to Pitbull.
Oh, there we go. Got it. Mr. Worldwide, of course.
We're not actually doing that to my knowledge.
Okay, got it. Dang.
Sorry.
I got my hopes up. All right. So 2025 M&A snapshot. So 42 deals announced or completed, up from 41 in 2024. So that's good. Still haven't finished the year yet. And we all know that like, as you're on November, December, like things just kind of get wild, right?
Yeah, things can really go quickly.
Yeah. $39.3 billion disclosed deal value. And your average deal size was 1.6 billion. Just, oh, sorry guys. You know, I got a newborn, so, you know. Well,
We're trying a morning shoot. So, it's
I know, yeah. Yeah. And the week of Thanksgiving, you know? Yeah. By the way, controversial take. I think brisket should be served on Thanksgiving. Do you know anybody who likes turkey? I don't know anybody who's like, you know, like there's people like, yeah, I'll have a little turkey, but nobody's like, man, I can't wait to eat turkey this year.
If it's done well, which can be challenging, yeah, I think turkey's pretty good, but my family has been doing brisket for years now. So
yeah, there we go.
Dude,
I'm gonna be smoking a brisket, man.
There
big
we go.
Old piece of meat. So, and speaking of a big old piece of meat, average deal size this year, 1.6 billion. You like? How about that? How about that segue? Right?
Yeah,
look at that transition.
Well, you know, it's all thanks to this Abbott acquisition. You know, I think we have here in our notes that if you take out that acquisition, the average deal size drops quite a bit
to seven.
To about
795. That's a 49% decrease year over year. So the deal. Okay, so let's take a quick sidebar to talk about that. So the average deal size drops 49% year over year. So does that also include last year's, like some of the mega deals that happened last year, or is it taking those ones out?
Well, there was no real mega deal quite like this in.
Well, not like this. Yeah, you're
So,
right.
like,
You're right.
We kind of you know, if it's not anything that's crazy above like $10 billion, we've included it within the math effectively. So yeah, looking at 2024 acquisition average deal size, it came down quite a bit in 2025. But the good news is that volume of deals is now, as of last week, officially up. So we may see a couple more, and this will end the year on a strong foot.
Okay. All right. Fair. All right. So takeaway just overall, 2025 was essentially this year of essentially tuck-ins and focus, right? With all these strategics like spinning things out. And I think it's going to be really good. I think, you know, I know a lot of companies that have failed because they were not focused. I've never seen a company fail because they were too focused. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how this all rolls into 2026. So
absolutely.
All right, moving on to the next segment of the show, inside the $70 billion cardiovascular devices market. A little teaser, a little glimpse on that. That's one of the divisions J&J is not letting go of. They're holding on to that. So Nick, kind of run us through it.
Yeah, so in the spirit of providing some relevant market intelligence around the conference season, we had AHA and TCT's conferences this month, and we wanted to provide some market data on the second largest medical device market in the world, first being in vitro diagnostics. So looking again at that Exact Sciences world, looking at the cardio market, it's huge. And if you just take into consideration the fact that there are 500 million people with cardiovascular disease, there's so much investment and capital flowing into this market. It's really fascinating where things are going, how much innovation continues to happen here. You compare it to orthopedics, which is the third largest market, and not to knock orthopedics, it just doesn't seem to be moving at quite the same speed. And maybe that's because orthopedics has fewer challenges compared to the management of complex disease like cardiovascular disease. So, wrote some insights around that. Omar, why don't you take us through a couple of the stats here, and we can kind of chew up what we've got.
Totally. So essentially, cardiovascular remains one of the most dynamic markets in medtech. So it's now valued again between $66 and $72 billion, according to our trusted market intel team over at LSI. projected to surpass $100 billion early next decade. So we've got a lot of innovation highlights this month around AHA and TCT conferences, which were spotlighting a lot of rapid advancements in heart failure management, renal denervation, and AI-powered diagnostics. So quick, fast stats on the cardiovascular market. Cardiovascular devices, again, valued at 66.2 to 72.3 billion. So it's the largest device market of all of them. So if you are a repeat founder, an entrepreneur, and you're trying to figure out what potential market you can go into the cardio market. It's growing at a very healthy and juicy 6% CAGR. And it's, again, expected to exceed $100 billion by the early 2030s. And so you want me to roll through these different segments here?
Yeah, we'll jump into it, but I'll just add real quick there that, if you look at overall fundraising and acquisitions in this space as well, if you are a founder, an early stage founder in the cardiovascular market, you're in good company. There's a lot of eyes on this market from investors across the board, as well as the strategics, which are looking to acquire companies. As you said, J&J is not letting go of its cardio business, and we can expect to see more deals in this space. These are the high growth business segments of many of the medical device company strategics.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see also, not the BD arms, but the venture arms of these companies, because I think that's the one thing that's happened is that this year I've noticed, venture funding as a whole is up, but fewer companies are receiving that funding. And so this is where I feel like strategics and many strategics can step in and really start funding these companies.
Definitely.
So it'll be interesting to see. All right, let's start first with heart failure. The big insight from the heart failure is that it's becoming a focal point for diagnostics, monitoring, and interventional innovation. So worldwide, about 60 million patients, according to Compass. Over 500 million have been raised by heart failure companies in 2025 per Compass data. Heavy strategic activities from Edwards, J&J, and then it also remains as one of the most clinically burdensome cardiovascular conditions. So I think there were a lot of really interesting things coming out there. This is an area where I feel AI applications can be really helpful.
Yeah. We'll talk about that more in a second here with just the broader AI and cardio space, but I completely agree with you. I don't know if I've said it on this show, but I've certainly said it in other venues. If you are looking at what market is going to be hot in 2026, where should you be paying attention if you're not already? I will say, in my opinion, and just based off the data that we see, heart failure is the space to be looking at. And for all of the reasons that you just listed, whether it be the total addressable market, whether it be the need for innovation and better therapeutic devices, or the fact that strategics are paying attention here. They're buying companies in this space because eventually, if untreated or if poorly managed, cardiovascular disease progresses to heart failure, which has terrible outcomes today for patients.
Yeah. And, I personally know some people have been affected by this condition. It's a very scary one. And I think this is an area also that if you think about when you discover heart failure, it's usually a later onset. So I think this is one area where digital health and diagnostics can really play a huge impact.
Yeah.
So
and maybe that's a good segue to talking about just how fully integrated continuous monitoring and AI is becoming in this space, which is, based off of what we're seeing, AI-based devices in cardio are the second largest category within cleared devices at the FDA. It makes a lot of sense. There's a ton of data that you have to take into consideration and sort of reconcile, if you will, between all the various biometric signals that you're looking at. The fact that a patient historically is monitored when they come into the clinic and then they go home and their disease worsens. And you have no real way to follow that until the advent of these devices. So it's I don't want to say it's an up and coming market. It's a here to stay market for cardio.
You know what I want, speaking of which, by the way, sidebar, and you know what I would like to see?
What's that?
Nvidia has essentially become like a bank for like all of these AI companies, right? And you know, there's plenty of like really hilarious and not G-rated memes about the AI industry, but you know, I've seen Nvidia, do more presentations and talk more about health. I would like to see their venture arm start bankrolling more AI-based medtech companies.
Yeah, I'd be curious what it looks like. I'm just going to jump into Compass really quick and see what their investment activity looks like in the past couple of years here.
Jump into Compass while I do a phenomenal product plug. For those who are interested in Compass, you can essentially go beyond discovery. You got to navigate medtech market opportunities with confidence. We use Compass here all the time. I love jumping in there because the data is so good. It's so up to date. And more importantly, there are unique data points in Compass you can't find anywhere else. And if you think about it, between the presentations that are done at LSI, everything that's being tracked, the meetings, etc., it's really fascinating. So you can get data on thousands of private companies, comprehensive market forecasts, and insights to essentially stay on top of the competition. If you want to learn more, you can go to lifesciencemarketresearch.com/compass and learn more. And by the way, without like sharing pricing, the pricing is like phenomenal. Like a small little business can afford Compass. So if you don't have a Compass, you know, don't waste your money on these random websites like PitchBook and everything. Sorry guys, or Crunchbase. You should have a Compass subscription, to be honest.
I appreciate that. I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, it's a tool that we use, we use it for our own work. And so it's, as you said, it's great to be able to sit on this proprietary data set that we have. It really makes it so that we can pull out unique insights on our industry, and you don't have to wait to hear them from us. If you're inquisitive, if you want to see where the market is going, where the medtech market overall is going, you can jump in today. So yeah, I with that brief sales intermission out of the way, I did take a look here, and I noticed that, you know, the main things that stick out is Nvidia has been really active with surgical robotics companies. So Moon Surgical, Neptune Medical, who has a smaller company within them that has an endoscopic robot, and then virtual incision, and then Hyperfine, portable MRI. They've been working with Hyperfine. And then interestingly, Synchron, which is a neuromodulation company, BCI company, if you will. So a lot of partnerships there. I'm not seeing any investment activity. So to your point, Omar, maybe they need to open up a venture arm.
Maybe the state of medtech needs to come heavy-handed on Nvidia. Talk to Uncle Jensen. Throw some love over here in medtech, okay? All right, let's keep moving on. So renal denervation.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting area. I feel like renal denervation was like super hot many years ago, wasn't so hot. Now it's back,
yeah.
Right? So essentially, renal denervation is finally at its like sort of long-awaited inflection point. The big milestone is that CMS has approved national Medicare coverage, which will be a major catalyst for the market. Get this, you guys ready for this? You know me, I love nice, juicy, big CAGRs. The current market is at 60 million, okay? The CAGR, though, is at a 17.2% CAGR. Oh, you guys remember we were talking earlier about some of the markets? I think we were talking
Cardio,
about
6%.
Cardio's at 6%. Okay, so cardio's at 6%, but it's at like almost a $70 billion market. Now renal denervation, it's only at 60, but it has a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you think about it, if you have a startup, you have a really good product, and you get like a good chunk of that $60 million market at a 17% CAGR, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar market really, really soon, like within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we see Medtronic betting big on this. Boston Scientific made an acquisition in this space. So, I think
What was the acquisition that Boston made?
Blanking on the name. We'll run it through Compass, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the growth and what's exciting to you about this technology, Omar. I know that we talk often about getting patients off of pharmaceutical management.
That's like the big thing for me, man.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. Sorry, everybody, I'm pouring myself a cup of coffee here. That's the big thing is that like the reason, if you think about it, there's no such thing as a doctor who's like, oh, I'm a device guy or I'm a pharma gal. They use the tool that's best.
Mm-hmm.
And so what needs to happen is that I'm not like anti-pharma, but I'm sort of pro. Let's have like various levels of support for this.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Absolutely. And so the company was Sonovy. We talked about them earlier.
Sonovy, there we go. Uncle Ray.
They were acquired this year for $540 million. They have an ultrasound-based catheter system, which is what the leading company in this space also uses, ultrasound-based technology. That's ReCore. Whereas Medtronic has, I believe, an RF-based, radiofrequency-based ablation system for renal denervation. And I was looking at Medtronic's quarterly report because unfortunately we didn't get to cover them when we talked about quarterly earnings a couple of weeks ago. They hadn't released theirs yet. But Medtronic is very bullish on this. They say there's 18 million patients in the United States that could benefit from renal denervation. And those are the drug-resistant patients.
Those are what we know.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that we know.
That's the entry point. There's 1.4 billion people with hypertension, 18 million in the United States with drug-resistant hypertension, according to Medtronic. We'd have to look into those a little bit more, but I'm sure they've stuck with this for a long time. They know there's a huge opportunity here, and I think Boston getting into this space confirms that.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. And then last area essentially is connected monitoring and AI, so AI and cardio. So this is no longer just like enhancing a workflow. It's essentially something that's becoming more clinical. So there's a shift to, you can call it cardiology without walls, which is being driven by FDA cleared devices that essentially blur this line between monitoring and diagnostics. I think put another way, getting a clinical grade care outside of the clinic, right? That is a part that's really exciting. So cardiovascular, again, second highest category for FDA cleared AI devices. What's the first? Neuro?
It's actually radiology.
Obviously. Yeah, that's shame on me. How did I not see that one? Yeah, obviously.
It's been around for so long that it's almost like, it's one of those things that it's not top of mind, but it's still huge, and it's a great use of AI. Again, cardio being another great utilization of the capabilities of what AI can do.
Yeah. Well, and for those who are wondering, again, think about it like on the wearable side, which gets you near diagnostic grade accuracy. And essentially there's a shift towards early detection and continuous care. There's these objective benefits to monitoring cardiovascular diseases. Deterioration is essentially detectable before symptoms, and there are also numerous quantifiable biometric signals. Using AI, the immense amount of data can be properly interpreted and harnessed to improve patient outcomes. I'm going to give a teaser, couldn't help it. But last week I was invited as a guest down to iRhythm. I met with CEO Quentin Blackford, and we talked a lot about what they're doing and essentially the data sets they have for arrhythmias. I'm really excited about that company. I'll give, I don't want to give too much away because we're going to have them on the show in December. But, if you guys, let's just put it this way. If you go look at their earnings report, it is really impressive. Really, their EBITDA is insane. Their profit margin is over 68-70%.
Wow.
It's a really impressive company, right? This is not financial advice, by the way. You should not listen to me. I'm just a dude on the internet.
We don't do financial advice on
technology. But go check it out. Really, really, really cool. Yeah, to give us kind of your take on the connected monitoring and AI space.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those spaces that really makes sense. Again, if we kind of zoom back out and see how many patients there are, potential patients, 500 million people worldwide with cardiovascular disease. There's a consumer that's already familiar with continuous monitoring and wearable devices thanks to Apple and other consumer-based devices. And a lot of these technologies can be deployed in them. LSI alumni Happy Tech, they have a partnership, I believe, with many consumer-grade devices for their arrhythmia monitoring technology that integrates into a consumer device. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, patients' conditions, it continues to progress outside of the clinic. So being able to monitor and get alerts before that next deterioration happens, it can overall improve care. You don't want a patient to progress to heart failure. If caught and managed early, you can prevent that progression in a lot of cases. So I love it. I love what this space is doing. I think it's one of those areas where just AI plays really well, makes sense. It's not just being tacked on because it's a trendy buzzword. It works here.
Yeah. And, something I want to, quick sidebar, I want to go off on. So last week, we had a really interesting news break in our industry, made it to TechCrunch and everything, which essentially a jury ruled that Apple owes Masimo $634 million for patent infringement. Mm-hmm. And this essentially has to do with their blood pressure monitoring. And they essentially released the Apple Watch, and so there's this whole thing with patent. Now, why is that important? I want to share my screen. We're going to take you back to LSI 2025. Joe Kiani, founder and former CEO of Masimo, gave us a great presentation, and it was kind of cut off because of the editing, but the first question was my question. I asked him, what was the most painful lesson that he learned? And I want to play his answer, one, because it kind of plays into the news that just happened last week, but also I think it's really, really powerful advice for founders. So let's, let me pull that up real quick.
Is you can't give up control of your company. I used to think that when you're really good at what you do, that's all the control you need. Because why would anybody want to change anything? What I learned from the capital markets is that unfortunately, some of the funds are doing portfolio management. It's not you as a company that they're trying to maximize. They're trying to maximize their portfolio. I went against some incredibly powerful companies. I went against Nelcor, which was part of Tyco at the time, and we won. I went against Philips, and we won. I went against Apple, and we won. We're the first company to enjoin Apple. Apple didn't just do this to us. They pretty much everything you see in their products is somebody else's. They give it the name efficient infringement. That it's more efficient, better for their shareholders if they infringe than if they actually license or buy companies. But it's really predatory infringement. But the problem is, my investors, they owned over $1 trillion of Apple shares. And what I was doing to Apple, I don't think they liked. The day we got an injunction, their stock fell 2%. That was a $60 billion hit to their stock. We went up, I think, 10%, but that was like $700 million gain with our stock. So I think a lesson maybe for investors and entrepreneurs is, it's one thing to give up control to people people you trust. But when you go public, don't give up control. You can have two classes of shares these days. It's more common. And you can go public by not giving the public the ability to change things around in your company. I can't tell you how upset it makes me when I see products we spent years developing to help babies like Stork, opioid halo to deal with the opioid epidemic, where people were dying from opioid overdose. They killed them all. They came in and just killed them all. not just new projects that were being developed, existing projects. They let go of hundreds of incredible people. That stuff hurts. It's one thing for me not to be there anymore, but it's another thing to see the things that society needs, people need, just being tossed out. So don't give up control. Yes.
Really, really good advice, especially for anybody who's running a publicly traded company.
Or thinking
On
about
that
it.
note, yeah, but on that note, sidebar to Apple, I'm talking to you through a MacBook. I got an iPad here. I got my iPhone 17. Now I'm in the Apple ecosystem. This company, there's a reason why they haven't innovated a whole lot. I mean, we can get into leadership and everything. Maybe that's one part of it. The other side of it is, let me ask you a pop quiz question, Nick.
Kat,
Do you know what was Apple's largest acquisition?
is it that they haven't made one?
No, they've made one. Let's start with, okay, Apple's $1 trillion company. Just throw a number out there. What do you think they paid for this acquisition? I'm going to tell you. This is the largest acquisition in their history. What do you think they paid? Throw a number out there.
$1 billion.
Okay, it was close. So Apple, who's how much is it? Let's see the Apple market cap today. Apple's market cap today. This is a $4.1 trillion company. Trillion. Do you know how much a trillion is? A trillion is 1 billion a billion times. That's insane. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So this $4.12 trillion company, and I think the only company that's bigger than it right now is Nvidia at 4.2. So Nvidia is at 4.27.
Yeah,
Apple is at 4.12. Okay. Their acquisition history, you ready for this? They've only acquired 2 companies in the billions. All right?
Yes.
Just 2. All right? The biggest acquisition that they've made was Beat by Dre for $3 billion. So in the last like 20 years, longer, just last 20, forget about 20, just the last 10 years, their biggest acquisition was a headphone company.
It's interesting.
Doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense at all. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then also, with heart failure and all these other digital diagnostics, I wonder. I think that's a very important point for CEOs to keep in mind, is who essentially is their shareholders, because if this sort of efficient infringement tactic comes up, and you go and win against an Apple or any of these huge mega companies, right? You could be dealing with an investor base that really does not care. Again, like Joe Kiani said, when they won that injunction, their stock went up $700 million in market cap, but the Apple stock went down by $60 billion based on what those investors had, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really good advice, really good. So I wanted to sort of share that as we kind of round things out and go on to our Q3 earnings. You ready to do the Q3 earnings?
Let's do it. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna roll through these. And actually, these are the strategics, the main strategy. We have 1, 2, 3,
it's
4,
all
5,
strategics
6,
for
7. Yeah. So if you're ever curious, there are 7 strategies. So Q3 earnings from the major strategics essentially showed broad-based strength despite persistent macro headwinds, with many companies posting double-digit growth across their core categories. Robotics, electrophysiology, structural heart, and cardiovascular, they essentially all continue to drive performance, while the tuck-in M&A and portfolio reshaping remain these sort of central themes. Together, Q3 results provide one of the clearest signals yet that Medtech is exiting 2025 with a lot of focus, a lot of confidence, a strong setup for 2026. So let's roll through it. Abbott, 12.8% growth year over year, strength in diabetes, heart failure, structural heart, and electrophysiology. They missed analyst expectations in their diagnostic space. Volt PFA system is launching in 2026. Moving on from there to Boston Scientific with a very strong 20.3% year-over-year growth, targeting 50% global PFA share. China tariff essentially impacted about $100 million. Axonics integration was a little bit slower than expected. You do those big M&A deals, and Abbott will see this with Exact Sciences. The integrations take a lot longer than expected. I think we sort of saw that way back in the day when the Covidian Medtronic deal happened, and then later the Stryker Mako deal. Edwards Life Sciences with 14.7% year over year. They raised a full year of guidance. TAVR remains the growth engine. Mitral and tricuspid pipeline are starting to gain traction. Stryker at a 10.3% year over year growth. Record Mako installations. Ortho was 11.4% after spine divestiture. Tariffs that were expected were $200 million in 2025. Siemens with 3.7% year over year growth. Full year Q4. Imaging and Variant performing pretty well. Market reaction muted due to deconsolidation. J&J with J&J Medtech, by the way, not J&J Medtech, with 6.8% year-over-year growth, preparing their DePuy spinout, focusing more on electrophysiology, LVAD, and IBL. Ottava filing expected to be a major 2026 catalyst. By the way, just gotta make a note that the team from Nvidia, which in large part came from Oris J&J, essentially got their robot to market before J&J got Ottava out. So, we'll see when they finally get it out. I'm
been hearing about it forever.
Yeah, I know. We'll see what that looks like. And finally, you may have thought, wow, Boston Scientific may have been the best performing strategic out of all of them.
Not too bad.
As always,
20%.
Intuitive sneaking past Boston Scientific with a 23% year-over-year growth. That's 11,000 Da Vinci systems installed globally. Recurring revenue of about 85%. Bariatrics were down due to GLP-1 weight loss drugs. And again, just to make that even more impressive, Boston Scientific's market cap is essentially at $149.7 billion, while Intuitive is at $204 billion. So well over a $50 billion difference in market cap, and Intuitive was still able to beat the street,
Yeah.
Their stock year to date is up 9.9%. But I don't know. One must have, you have to ask yourself, at some point it's not going to continue, right? For Intuitive, especially with all these changes. Histosonics now is going to be, I think, a formidable competitor.
Yeah.
To the Da Vinci
incisional. Yep. Yeah, as it gets more and more competitive, especially in the Asian APAC region, where a lot of growth is happening, it'll be interesting to see how the competitive landscape evolves for surgical robotics. But overall, really strong quarter that we saw. As you read off there, I think over half of the companies that we covered, and it wasn't all of the strategics, it was the ones that had announced their earnings already for the quarter. Over half of them have double-digit quarterly year-over-year growth, which is great. Medtronic, I took a look at theirs this morning in preparation for this show, and I think they posted 6.6% year-over-year growth, but also reiterating that they're seeing a lot of growth in electrophysiology in their cardio businesses. And interestingly, kind of maybe tying it back to the Intuitive question, their med-surg business is kind of struggling without the surgical robotics platform footprint that Intuitive has. MedSurg and Medtronic and J&J is it's been hurting.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. So it'll be really interesting. 2026 is gonna be, as the kids say, it's gonna be lit, gonna be a banger. All right, there we go. We're both young dads. We got to start practicing our dad jokes from now, okay? All right, deals of the month. Let's close this out strong. All right, here we go. All right, I'm going to roll through all of these. You gave me a great list here, man. This is good. All right, Okami Medical, $45 million. It's a device for treating peripheral vascular occlusion, led by former Inari CEO Drew Hykes. It's an exciting one. Drew had some great success over at Inari.
Yeah.
Acerra Surgical, as we mentioned, Ventum acquired them for about $900 million. That's a synthetic soft tissue repair and advanced wound management technology. Nioxa, Medtech needs to do a better job of naming. Hit us up at MarketCraft. One of our head.
There we go.
We're like, naming is not like something I get too jazzed up, but essentially our head of strategy and ops has a degree in linguistics from Oxford. And so she's actually one of the few people who has built a career around naming and like knows a lot about it. So if you're about to start a company, come talk to us for naming. So just go to marketcraft.ai or just hit me up online. All right. So Nizoa raised $77 million. It's a minimally invasive neuromodulation implant for obstructive sleep apnea. Cornerstone Robotics raised $200 million. Robotic endoscopic surgical system called Sentir, gaining traction in China's domestic robotics push. Synchron raised another $200 million. Less invasive BCI implant platform, pivotal trial on the horizon. Men's Health, strategic partnership with Medtronic, which is a home-based uroflowmetry plus bladder monitoring integrated with Medtronic's InterStem system. Sovado, $41 million Series B, which is a device-agnostic platform enabling remote robotic surgery or telerobotics. Orchestra Biomed did $30 million. Terumo restructures their agreement and invests further. Sirolimus coated balloon alternative to
Paclitaxel.
Why are you putting these words in there for me?
I'm sorry.
Why are you putting these? Come on, Nick. And then finally, Surgical Automation's big shout out to them. Congratulations. They raised their $3.4 million seed autonomous endoscopic robotic system backed by Intuitive founder Dr. Fred Mall. What robotic company is he not in? Right?
We can look it up in Compass.
If there, we can
find out. We can audit.
Can we look that up?
Do the audit.
Can we look that up? I feel like if there, look, let's just put it. If a surgical robotic company was founded in like the mountains of Tibet, that Monday morning, Fred Mall's getting an email from somebody. You know,
check us out.
I know, seriously. So just kind of closing it off. So look, if there's one thing that November made clear, it's that essentially MedTech is doubling down on focus, whether it's Abbott making this historic push into cancer diagnostics, GE kind of sharpening its AI imaging stick, or the industry, essentially just investing more into focus. The big thing is that we're not chasing breadth anymore. It's all about focus and just doubling down on things. So I think going to 2026, a lot of tuck-in core deals, more importantly, mini strategics starting the M&A market. 2026 is going to be an interesting year. I think it's going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
Nick, some closing insights from you.
Yeah, I'll throw something out there for our founders, our early stage medtech companies listening to the podcast. Do your homework. The investors, the strategics, they want to make deals, but they want you to have everything buttoned up. They want to see clinical evidence early. They want to know what your regulatory pathway looks like. They want to know commercial viability. They don't want to hear that this is a $900 billion total addressable market. They want to know what it is today and where you fit into it and how much you can realistically capture. And if you can do those things, you're more likely to secure an investment, early stage or growth stage round, and you're going to be really appealing to the strategics that do have an appetite to acquire commercial ready companies. So buckle up, do your work, and there's opportunity out there. The industry has to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, for those of you who are founders, you want maybe a little bit of a template. If you just look on my LinkedIn and go through my articles, or just Google my name plus Mini Strategics. If you go to the Mini Strategics article, towards the bottom, there's a little bit of a template we put together at MarketCraft to kind of guide you on how you should think about engineering your market. One of those areas is essentially building this, what we call the acquirer first memo. But go take a look at that. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, forward this on to other people in medtech, forward it on to an investor. Go check out Compass. Again, greatest tool in the industry. Go to lifesciencemarketresearch.com/Compass to learn more. And happy Thanksgiving. By the time this has come out, Thanksgiving has already happened. So we hope you had a great Thanksgiving holiday with you, your family, and loved ones. Nick, good seeing you as always, brother.
Good seeing you. Take care, Omar.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who would really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.